Hey, welcome to Handi Quilter's Watch and Learn, where we teach you great techniques to use with all of your quilting projects. Today, we're going to show you how to take a project like this that was previously done on just your domestic machine and add a little more pizzazz and pop to it. And to catch more episodes of Watch and Learn, be sure to subscribe to our channel. I'm Kim Sandberg, and with me today is
Aimee Losey.
And we're both studio educators here at Handi Quilter, and we love to teach people how to do stuff with their long arms, right?
Yes.
So today we have a really awesome question to get started with. So Aimee, let's pull up this question here.
All right.
So Aimee was actually surfing Facebook recently, and she found a really great post from a gal whose name is Jane Batt. And we thought this was such an awesome quilting conundrum. We wanted to use it for our episode today. So Jane commented and said, I have quilts I previously just stitched in the ditch on my domestic before I got my long arm. My question is, has anyone pinned a quilt to their leaders and then quilted it? I'd love to quilt these, and you guys can see her awesome quilts she's got there. I love how she has them all arranged on her couch. And then she says, any advice? The answer is yes, you can totally do this, right, Aimee?
Oh, yes, yes.
As a matter of fact, it was quite fun when Aimee found this post because we had been talking about this in the studio. We actually have projects like this one I'm showing you here. Christina, Aimee, and I all have projects that we want to add a little more to. And they're all projects that we previously finished on our domestic machines before we got long arms. So just like Jane's.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about these. So her question was, can we attach them to the leaders? The answer is absolutely yes. Definitely. So let's talk about some of the ways that we can do this. So we've got a couple of different options here, right?
Yes.
So this first one, this is Christina's quilt. Cute little fish. You can see that the original quilting on it's pretty minimal. Just some straight line quilting. And she's got some really fun detail on this quilt. She could definitely add a little more to it. I know that she'd like to do that.
Yes.
So she decided to just baste this to some quilts, some fabric scraps there. You guys can see that. She just basted this. And then she will pin these to her leader, right?
Yeah, that's what she was planning on doing.
So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, and Aimee's actually got a set here, a quilt, that is already attached to some leaders. So don't be afraid to do that. So Aimee used the same technique, right?
Yes. So I had my sleeve up at the top, and I basted it to my sleeve.
So her sleeve was it actually stitched down on the back of the?
It was.
So you undid?
I undid it.
So she just unpicked the bottom part there where the sleeve was, and then she just took it up here and attached it to the leader. And she just used a basting stitch on your domestic sewing machine, right? Yep, just a nice big loose stitch.
And you don't have to worry because they pull out really easily. And if you're worried about tearing your quilt, you can always just unpick it, and it unpicks really fast.
Exactly.
And on the bottom, because I didn't have a sleeve, I did add fabric to the bottom.
Okay, so you did that, and then she just attached there at the bottom too. So this is a quilt that Aimee has already added some extra to, or at least started to.
Yes.
So Aimee, let's talk about some of the cool things you've added here, because I love what you did. So this original quilt, really cute, but how did you originally quilt it?
Just stitch in the ditch.
Yep.
That's all I did, and it wasn't exciting. It was kind of boring to me.
Yeah.
But when I started adding to it, I used a metallic thread,
which I love,
and it just really adds some oomph.
It does.
To my quilt. I love it, and I'm excited to finish this quilt.
Oh, I love it. So are these designs, how did you quilt these designs?
I used Pro Stitcher.
Okay.
So these are Nancy Hackey design snowflakes, and then I can't remember
this border. I've used this border too.
It's a holly leaf.
It's in the Pro Stitcher library.
It is.
Yeah. Are these in the Pro Stitcher library?
Those are actually purchased from one of her clubs.
Okay. So that's Wasatch Designs.
Wasatch Designs, yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So I love this. So you're actually going back and you're quilting a little design in each one of these blocks, and you're adding in a border there. And you really did just a very simple stitch in the ditch. I mean, you just stitched here. You didn't even stitch up along the side of these blocks. No. So I love that. So it's cool to see that, yeah, you absolutely can do that. You can do it with a Pro Stitcher. So let's take a look at the quilt we have loaded here on the frame. So this is a quilt that I made, oh, I want to say 15 years ago. It's actually, I tried my hand at needle turn applique. Yeah, anyway, it's, I found it the other day, and I had actually went through, and just like you, I had just done a really basic stitch in the ditch. You can look here and you can see that I did a little bit of outline quilting, echo quilting, but even that is really not super cool. I just echoed up along the edge of these, and that's all I did essentially to tack it down. But there is a lot of room to do some fun stuff in this quilt, isn't there?
Definitely, definitely.
So we thought we would give this a try. And just to make a note, we actually wanted to show you another thing that you can do when you're attaching this. You know, we attached it to the top and bottom leaders. I did the same thing Aimee did, where I just added little strips of fabric to the top and bottom. But then when you get to the sides and you need to clamp on, I didn't want to have to stitch a whole extra piece of fabric down the sides. So if you take a look over here, you can actually see we used a piece of twill tape that I just have pinned to the side. And then I also used, so we've got twill tape right here. And then if we come over here to the second one, I actually have a piece of binding that just was left over that I've used. So, if, you know, I figure we all have some of those kicking around, right? So I just have those pinned to the sides so that I have a little bit of tension on the sides of the quilt too, because we do want to make sure it's stabilized. A note to really keep in mind when you're stitching on something like this is we've already done the binding, right? So you're going to need to be mindful of that as you quilt, because this quilt for me is a wall hanging. I'm not so worried about if I quilt right up to the edge of that binding that it's going to show on the back. But if you do have a quilt that's going to be used and it's not going to be hung on a wall where you're not going to see the back of it, you might want to be a little mindful of that, just depending.
I know with the quilt I was doing, that's why I chose to do the blocks rather than an edge to edge on the, but edge to edge, you can definitely do that. You just need to think about that.
Yeah, exactly. You can stitch over that little bit of binding, especially if your binding's a little bit longer on the back. Just be aware that that's what could potentially happen. So Aimee and I thought we would just have a little bit of fun today showing you some ideas of what we would add to this quilt, right? So we're just gonna have a little bit of fun quilting today. So let's take a look down here. We were gonna go ahead and jump in with my little red schoolhouse here. That's kind of how I think of this, as a barn or a schoolhouse, right? So Aimee was asking me how I was gonna quilt this, and I thought, well, why don't we just start having some fun with it? So let's go ahead and I'm gonna do my thread here. I'll do a little tie off real quick. Okay, so first of all, I just want to do some straight line quilting across here, essentially to create the siding on the side of this. So I'm just going to come up here and just stitch across. I thought about maybe getting fancy and trying to do bricks, but I think that might be a little out of my range right now.
So Kim, I noticed you turned the Pro Stitcher on. Why did you do that?
I just wanted to engage my gears, because right now I'm stitching straight lines. And so if I engage my gears, it just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so as I'm stitching in these windows, I think I'm just going to stitch right inside where I have those little, the lines in the plaid fabric to kind of create that. Okay, and let's go down across here. I'll travel across, come down, do some up and over again. Kind of see if I can replicate what I did on my other window there. Kind of add a little extra detail here.
It's already starting to look a lot better.
A little more finished, right?
Yes.
So this is actually kind of fun, because this is a quilt. I spent a lot of time making this quilt. So to be able to go back and really add in the quilting details, kind of the last thing. Maybe I'll actually get this quilt completely finished. Oh my gosh, and I feel like this goes so much faster on my long arm than it did on my sewing machine. Although, you know, there is something to be said about sitting down with your machine and just enjoying the process, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, let's see if I can make all my little lines line up here.
And if you don't have Pro Stitcher, you can definitely do this with a ruler.
Yeah, ruler, electromagnetic channel locks, any of the above. Okay, so let's finish traveling up across here and doing my lines that go across. That really does help it out, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay.
Kind of looks like a log cabin almost.
It does now, doesn't it? Gives a little bit of that feel. All the lines across there. What should we go to next?
I think you're in where the roof is. Maybe do the roof.
What should I do with the roof? What do you think?
I think it'd be kind of like up and down like the fabric, or you can even do a crosshatch.
You're right. I think I'll just kind of do up and down to kind of echo what's going on in the fabric here. It's kind of like with the plaid, just adding that little bit of extra detail that's already in the fabric, right?
Yes. You're not seeing the thread and the roof, but it is giving it more texture.
Yep, exactly.
And making it pop a lot more.
Absolutely. See if I can. Stitching at right angles always kind of interesting with your Pro Stitcher gauge.
Yes.
Your Pro Stitcher gears engaged. Okay, I'm gonna try to quilt straight across on those, and then come up here and go down, over, up, over, up. Okay, what do you think there?
I like it.
I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. I'm liking that. So I love that. Even though when I originally finished this quilt, I was pretty happy with the quilting. I can go back and add a little more now. Now let's talk about filling some of these big spaces like this, these background spaces. So what do you think? I'm thinking I want to do something just kind of nice and tight. I know we had talked about maybe adding like cloud textures or something like that, but I don't know.
It depends on what effect you're going for. If you're wanting your buildings to pop more, then a tight quilt
texture
would help accomplish that.
I totally agree with you. So I think that's what we should do.
Okay.
Let's do some of that. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and do just a kind of a tight stipple with a loop. And I'm actually stitching over the top of some of that, like stitch in the ditch that I did essentially. But I just want to fill in all this space with this texture, so it really doesn't matter to me. Now this is what I talked about earlier with getting up here nice and close to this binding. I want to make sure that I don't quilt over the top of the binding, but I can get really nice and close to it. So just be aware of that, like we mentioned before. So just kind of working my way down. Now we're getting down to another part that I have done, and you guys can see here I've got some embroidery, some hand embroidery, and there's a little tree here. So I don't want to stitch over the top of my embroidery, but I do want to help it pop like you were talking about. So I'm going to quilt right up next to it, but not quilt over the top of it. What do you think?
I think it looks great. I love how you're going up in where the leaves are.
Yeah.
Where they come away from the stem.
Trying to make it pop a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
That really is what I'm trying to do. Remember when I was doing all these French knots? Actually, I had never done a French knot. I always think to myself, my grandmother would have been very, very happy with those. She's the one that taught me how to do embroidery, and I don't know, I probably wasn't the best student. So, all right, so I'll go ahead and do a little bit more around this part here. You know, because my stitches are really just blending in with this background. It's probably a little hard for you guys to see, but it's definitely making a difference in how it's making this, the embroidery and the applique just pop a little more in what we're seeing. So let's look at some of the other spaces on this quilt. Let's talk about some of the other designs that we could definitely add here. I've actually got an inside border. So we've got the background fills running here. I've got an inside border right across here. So what kind of a design do you think we should fill in? I've actually got two different borders here side by side. I've got this one that's a little wider. This is probably what, 1.5 inch border?
Yes.
And then this is like a 1/2 inch border. It's pretty narrow. So what would you recommend?
So I would first want to look at the quilt and see, like, look at the different fabrics and look at the different elements in the quilt. Like, you have these flowers here with the hearts. You have, you know, a tree with the leaves.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, anything with hearts, flowers, leaves would look really good in that.
Hearts, flowers,
if
and
you're
leaves.
comfortable doing that free motion. If not, something as simple as doing the
Ribbon candy?
Or
even a wishbone.
Or a wishbone. Those are a lot of fun, and the borders.
They definitely are. All right, so what's the challenge you're going to throw down for me to put in this bigger border here? Do I dare let you?
You think you can do some leaves?
Yeah, I do. Let's see what I can do. Okay. So there's a leaf. So I'll come and do a leaf like this, and then do this at the center, and then do a little thing like this, and then do another leaf back like that.
I like that.
How's that for... And then I got to do one facing the other way. I guess I can actually do one just straight off of that one, huh? This is free motion. Part of the beauty is the individuality of every design that I'm quilting, right?
Yes.
I love it. Oh, this is where I start getting... You're going to have to remind me that we're filming and I have to stop at some point. Okay. I'm just going to finish out doing this border across here. I should pass this off to you and make you do a few of them here.
I love how the leaves that you're quilting are bringing out some of the elements in the fabric.
It's kind of fun to do that, isn't it?
It is. It is. When I'm trying to decide what to quilt on a quilt, that's where I get most of my ideas, is I really look at the quilt, the fabric that's in the quilt, the piecing in the quilt, to help me determine what design to put in there.
That's always a great place to start, isn't it? So adding in those leaves there are kind of fun. And then this center part, so this quilt actually has all these houses around, which is like the town green here. So I've got a fun little birdhouse there, some fun little flowers here. I'm thinking for this narrow little border here, I think I might just do like a wishbone or something like that.
I think that would look good.
I'll just, or maybe a ribbon candy might actually, let's see. How's that?
I like that.
Looking good? A little bit of a ribbon candy there to kind of fill it in. So I think that's looking good. All right, well, this gives me some really great ideas on what to do to add more to this quilt.
So what about these blocks? What?
So the center part of this here, I'm thinking I'll just do some kind of an all over to fill in all of this, something that's kind of grassy filling. I might even switch thread colors for this and do something green. So I'm not going to stitch anything right now because I am thinking I want it to maybe blend just a little bit more.
Yes.
Actually, I have some fun green that's a green on green variegated that could be really cool with this.
That would be fun. I love
So I'm thinking
variegated.
that would be fun. So I'll have to get this finished up and we'll take some pictures of it and be sure and post it with this episode. We'd also love to see what all of you can do. So now that you know, you can absolutely take a quilt that's already been stitched on your domestic machine or any other, type of machine that's had a little bit of quilting done on it and you want to add a little more to it, you can totally do it. Share those pictures with us. Be sure and give us a like and subscribe and have fun quilting this week.